house was old, but solid. When Tom moved in, he hadn't thought of being afraid. The creaking of the floorboards, the wind outside the windows, the quiet hum of the old pipes, all of these seemed like the usual sounds of an empty house. He lived here alone, and for the first few days, nothing happened. But then there was a knock. He heard it at night when he was sitting in the living room, immersed in reading. Dull, clear knocks. 3. 1, 2, 3. Simple, but not random. They sounded outside, behind the wall. Tom frowned, put his mug on the table, and stood up. He went to the door, opened it a crack. The street was empty. Only the wind stirred the branches of the trees. He returned to the living room. Before he could sit down, the knock was repeated. 3 knocks. But now they were coming from another room. From the bedroom. Tom felt a chill in his chest. He wasn't afraid, but it was unpleasant. He walked slowly into the bedroom, looked around the walls. He went to the window. He looked out. Darkness. Only his reflection in the glass. He sighed and went back to bed. Just old wood, he said to himself. But he didn't know that was only the beginning. The next morning, Tom tried to forget about the strange sounds. An old house, old walls, he thought. The wood is drying out, the roof is creaking in the wind. It all makes sense. But towards evening he heard them again. 3 knocks. This time they were coming from the kitchen. Tom stood up from his chair, listening intently. Something seemed strange. The sound wasn't just a knock. It was clear, sure, like someone was deliberately tapping out a rhythm. He walked into the kitchen. He looked around. The windows were closed, no sign of forced entry or wind. But when he turned around, his gaze fell on a photograph. A group photo of him, his brother, and 2 friends. Only now one person was missing. His brother was gone from the photo, as if he'd never been there. Tom grabbed the phone. He dialed his brother's number. The number is out of reach. He tried to remember the last time he'd spoken to him. But the images in his head were blurry, as if his brother had never existed. The next night, the knock came again. 3 knocks, and another person was gone from the photo. Now it was just him and 1 friend. Tom felt his hands shaking as he dialed the number again. There was no answer. All that was left were empty memories that were fading with each passing second. On the 4th night, Tom was already expecting a knock. When 3 knocks sounded, he did not move. He only slowly turned his head to the photograph. Now, there was only him, and he knew that the next night it would be his turn. The 5th night. Tom did not go to bed. He sat in the dark, clutching the phone in his hands, but he did not know who to call. There was no one left. The photograph was now empty. He held it in front of him, staring into the emptiness that should have been the faces of his friends, his brother, but there was no one there, as if these people had never existed, as if it had always been only him. 3 o'clock. The knocking came again. 3 distinct thumps, but this time they were louder. Tom stood up abruptly but froze. The sound was not coming from the wall, not from outside, but from inside himself. He held his breath. He put his hand to his chest and felt the rhythm. 1, 2, 3. The thumping was inside his ribs, echoing loudly in his bones, as if his own body was tapping out the sound, as if it no longer belonged to him, as if it was getting ready to disappear. The darkness began to thicken around him. It crawled up the walls, across the floor, sucking everything in. Tom wanted to scream, but only 3 dull thumps came from his throat. 1, 2, 3. The next morning, there was no one in the house. The photograph lay on the table. Not even Tom was in it now. Only an empty room. Only walls that never made a sound again.